Hello, welcome to this very exciting video that I'm sure you were waiting on. Actually, one second, let me reapply my lip balm. The Oden's Eye Perfect World collection, I believe this is called. I bought the palettes. I bought all three of them. The Sea Talk palette in collaboration with Lauren May Beauty, who you know is my queen. If you watch me, you know how much I love Lauren. So as soon as I saw that she was collabing with someone, I knew I had to buy it. And the Flora Story palette in collaboration with Makeup Just for Fun, Amanda, and the Planet Spirit palette in collaboration with Betty Jean. Okay, I don't have tons of time to film this video. I would love to be done this in an hour and a half. We'll see if that actually ends up happening. Anyway, did I even show you the insides? I don't think so. The Planet Spirit is super bright and colorful. I know I saw a lot of people say that they were surprised that Betty Jean came out with a color story that was so bright, but I feel like I also, while she does lots of grungy looks, I feel like I also associate her with like bright, bold colors that are like this as well. The Flora Story palette from Amanda is like purple and green, kind of muted, really pretty. And then the Sea Talk palette, which the packaging I am obsessed with. It's so pretty. I love the ocean. I'm terrified of it, but fascinated. And I don't even really feel like I see this as a super blue palette. I feel like it's kind of half blue, half neutral almost in a way, but really, really nice. I love all three of the creators that they collabed with for this collection. Don't get me wrong, I love all three of these women and I think they're great, so no shade to them. Of course, it's my channel, so I always have to say something, but I will say that number one, Oden's Eye still, I mean, does this hold as much weight? Because obviously I bought the palettes, but anyway, Oden's Eye needs to really fucking get on it with the skin tones that they show swatches on, because it's honestly unacceptable, the range of skin tones that they have swatched in their promo pictures and such. I don't think the fact that they are a Swedish brand is an excuse, because they very much cater to an international market, so that's unacceptable. I do see them sending out a little bit more PR to creators of different skin tones, but I think that they can really still do a lot more as a brand to be more inclusive to people of all skin tones. And as well, Faces by Gina on Instagram posted about this, and I have to agree the fact that all three of these creators are white women. Again, no shade to them. I love all three of them, but also all three palettes collabed with white women, called the Perfect World collection, released during Black History Month, is something that I think should have been considered and thought about, because it doesn't hit great. And that's what I'm gonna say. As my absolute fave, Khadija Mo, always says, you can like something and still be critical of it, and I think it's important to do that in the makeup beauty community industry, because makeup is political, it's inherently political, and it's always been political, especially when you have, situations like this. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents that I felt like I needed to talk about. And yeah, on that note, let's fucking swatch the palettes. Okay, so let's start with the Sea Talk palette that's right in front of me. It feels like a shame to mess up the patterns in these pans, but I've gotten my shots in, so all right, starting with the shade Dolphin Tail. This is a purpley taupe. Then we have Sunken Treasure. This is a metallic bronze, not super sparkly. Electric Kelp is a satin lime green. Mermaid Scale is a turquoise shimmer. Ocean Jewel is a metallic blue with a purple base, like a blue-purple duochrome. Smoky Pearl is a beautiful purpley taupe with tons of sparkle to it. I think these go in ascending order, the shimmers so far, not including the satins of sparkliness. Driftwood is a warm-toned brown, like a brown with some red to it, but it is very brown to me. Iridescent Shell is a pink with a really strong blue shift, really sparkly. Sea Spray is a little bit sheer, again, like purpley blue. And Night Swim is a matte navy. So these are all 10 of the shades, really, really pretty. And I like how you can go full blue if you want, or you could go neutral, or, you know, do both. Can I fit another palette on my arm? We're gonna fucking try. Okay, so this is the Flora Story palette. First, starting with the shade Dawn, which I believe is a multi-chrome. It looks pink, green, gold. Really pretty. Shroom is a mushroomy taupey brown. Magnolia is a really sparkly, smoky purple. Sage is a sagey green, could you have guessed? Lush is a metallic green with a blue shift to it. Clover is a mid-toned green. Best Buds, and I can't not think about weed. I know it has a wholesome, I think it's about her son, such a wholesome meaning to this name, but I don't know why. Anyway, it's like a really nice, icy, not quite a mint, metallic. It's really, really unique. I like that. Azalea is a mid-toned, or like kind of light, cool-toned purple. Misty is a metallic, let's see if you can see that, metallic green as well. Again, kind of with blue-ish shimmer to it. And then the last shade is the shade Orchid, which is a not super deep purple, like a mid-toned orchid, kind of neutral purple. So this is the Flora Story palette, if you can see it at all. Hopefully you can. Really, really nice, muted green and purple color story. And then we will switch over to my other arm. Maybe I should have zoomed in a bit, but we'll do We'll do up close swatches anyway, as always, so don't worry about that. And then finally, the Planet Spirit palette, which is super, super bright. So first is the shade Fauna. I can't remember if this is supposed to be a multi-chrome, maybe like multi-chrome adjacent, green, pink, golds. Kingdom is a bright teal matte. Animalia, who is a beautiful coral shimmer with a ton of gold sparkle. Pride is a really bright fuchsia, kind of purpley pink. Majestic is a like yellow with pink sparkle. Rescue is a super bright hot pink. Familiar is a metallic green. It's like a almost is like a duochrome between a grassy green and a teal. Habitat is a bright matte orange. Oops, I just dug my finger into the shade Rescue, which is unfortunate. Kindred is a basically like satin metallic purple. I don't think I love that necessarily. And then Sanctuary is the last shade, which is a beautiful warm toned like bright pink. So this is the Planet Spirit. Planet Spirit. I don't know why that name feels odd to me, but anyway, this is the Planet Spirit palette. I really like it. Wish there was more depth, obviously, but super bright, really fun. Betty Jean, I feel like, always does color stories that are a little bit difficult in terms of color theory, or at least in my mind, to plan looks, just with like all the warm tones and then the pops of teal. But anyway, so now I will roll the swatches of the footage of the up close swatches and eye swatches, and then we will get into the look. Okay, hello, welcome to the eye swatch portion of this video. If you've never watched an eye swatching video from me before, I prime my eyes with the NARS Smudge Proof eyeshadow base before every swatch. And with shimmers, I will go in with them first dry, then I'll spray my brush, and then I'll use my finger. So, I'm going to start with the Sea Talk palette from Lauren May Beauty. And I'm going to start with the first shade, the shade Dolphin Tail, which Oden's Eye describes as being a gray-toned light brown matte. That went on really nice. It's interesting that they describe this as being a gray toned light brown. I feel like this is a purpley kind of gray taupey shade, but I guess that's the same as a gray tone light brown matte. The next shade is the shade Sunken Treasure, which is described as being a brown gold shimmer base with gold toned shimmers. I'm going to start with this dry. Then I'm going to spray my brush and go in with my finger. Yeah, this is a really nice bronzy shimmer with gold sparkle. Not the most sparkly of the palette, but it's a really, really nice metallic. Okay, so next up we have the shade Electric Kelp. This is described as a light yellow metallic. I feel like it's more of like a bright green satin, but that's just me. I'm going to apply this, I think, as I would a matte. I feel like satins don't really foil quite the same way as mattes do, so I'm just going to apply this. Ooh, just, yeah. That is so pretty. And I'm not like a huge satin person, but that's just a really beautiful shade that applied super well. The next step is the shade Mermaid Scales. This is described as being a pale teal shimmer base with multicolor shimmers, which is actually true. There really are like many different shades of shimmer in here. Starting dry. Okay, so that built up nicely, but a little bit difficult to kind of like spread, if that makes sense. And then I'm gonna wet my brush. And my finger. But I feel like when you use your finger or a glitter glue, I don't have that kind of like stickiness issue with the shimmers. It's just kind of the way some of the more sparkly ones are formulated, but yeah, really, really pretty teal shimmer, and there really is truly multicolored sparkle. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but it's a really pretty shade. Next up, we have the shade Ocean Jewel, described as being a deep blue base with bright blue shimmers. This is definitely a purple duochrome as well. Starting dry. Ooh, that's pigmented right away. With a wet brush. And then with my finger. So yeah, this is a really beautiful deep blue shimmer. Has a purple shift for sure. And it doesn't quite have the same like almost stickiness is like the best word I can describe it, but the other shades that are like mermaid scale are just a little bit more like tacky almost. So they can be a little bit more chunky, a little bit more difficult to work with. This one on beautifully. The shade Smoky Pearl, which is gorgeous. It's described as being a coffee toned base with multicolor shimmer. I would say it's more of like a taupey shade, but yeah. Not me taking issue with every single shade description. Okay, so starting dry. Okay, with a wet brush now. And then with my finger, So to me, this is more of like a purpley toned taupey base with like silver sparkle. It's super, super beautiful. Okie dokie. Next up we have the shade Driftwood, which is described as a brown matte. Fair enough. Really nice. I would say this is like a brown matte, but a warm, like reddy toned brown matte. And then we have Iridescent Shell, which is described as a bright pink shimmer base with multicolor shimmer. Definitely a bright pink shimmer base. I feel like there's a really strong blue reflect to this. So starting dry. My camera stopped recording, of course, while I was watching this, but this is what it looks like, at least on the eyes. I was saying it's a little bit sheer, so to get it even to like this opacity takes a little bit of building up, but if you use a glitter glue, which is what I did in my look coming up, I was able to get it there. So yeah, it's more of like a sheer toppery formula, but you can build it up to be opaque. Okay, last two shades in the palette. We have the shade Sea Spray, which is described as a blue metallic with fine shimmers. This is another kind of like blue purple duochrome. So starting off dry. And then I'm going to use a wet brush. And then my finger. This is a really pretty shade. It's a little bit sheer again, and it's not quite as like chunky sparkly as one of the other shimmers in this palette. It does have fine shimmers, and yeah, definitely needs to be built up a little bit just to get like full opacity, if you want that, but it's really pretty. I like it more than I thought I was going to. And then lastly, we have the shade Night Swim, and this is described as a deep inky blue matte. That went on really, really nice. And navy blue. And that concludes the eye swatches of the Detox palette. Okay, on to the Flora Story palette. So, starting with the shade Dawn, which is described as being a transparent color with white, pink, and gold multi-chrome shifts. Starting with this dry, sorry for all the other blue sparkles, but I cannot get them off my eye, so here we are. Oh, and I also think I forgot to prime my eyes, so oops. So I think it's going to be a little bit difficult to see just like on my skin in this lighting, but we'll do our best. Going in with a wet brush. It definitely shines kind of like red pink the strongest, or at least that's what I can see in the mirror. And then my finger, and definitely is a little bit translucent. Like you can see my skin through it for sure. Really pretty though. I'm actually priming this other side now. And then I'm going to take the shade Shroom, which is described as a matte light brown. And this is definitely a very light, kind of like taupey brown. Okay, next up we have the shade Magnolia, which is described as being a gray-toned light purple pearl shine with multicolor shimmers. Going in with a wet brush. And my finger. So this is super sparkly, as you can see. It's like a dusty purple with tons of silver sparkle. It's really, really pretty. And then we have the shade Sage, which is described as being a mossy gray green toned matte. That went on beautifully. A very beautiful like gray green. Super nice. And then we have the shade Lush, which is described as being a grass green pearl shine with green shimmers. But I feel like there's purple shimmers in here. We'll start with a dry. Now with a wet brush, and then my finger. So this is more of like a just traditional metallic shade, not super sparkly, but there's definitely a purple kind of like shine to this, which is really, really pretty. It's a really pretty green. And then the shade Clover, which is a light gray green matte. Okay, and yeah, that went on really nice. Again, a very light kind of gray toned green. Okay, finishing out the eye swatching. Different day for me, same second for you. Okay, anyway, now I'm going to take the shade Best Buds, which is described as a light gold shimmer with multicolored shimmers. I think this is a green, but there might be something lost in translation. So, starting with the shade Dry. With a wet brush, and my finger. So this is more of a straight up, again, metallic. It's kind of like an icy green. It's like a light green with almost like a silver shine to it. Then we have the shade Azalea, which is described as being a gray toned light purple matte. Okay, so this is Azalea. It's a really nice, like light, kind of lilac shade with a little bit of like, yeah, gray to it. Really nice, soft. I like these two shades together. And if I'm glancing off the screen and I forget to edit it out, it's because I'm watching this Netflix series about Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. It's really interesting. Okay, so next up we have the shade Misty, which is described as being a yellowish green shimmer base with multicolor shimmers. Starting Dry. Spraying my brush. I feel like this is similar to the purple shade, the shade Magnolia, in that it's like a really, really sparkly, like with tons of sparkle in it. I would agree it's a yellow toned green with just tons of like silver sparkle. It's really, really pretty. And then the last shade in the palette is the shade Orchid, which is described as a dark gray purple matte. I feel like this is less gray, but anyway. Okay, that went on really, really nice. I would say this is like a mid-toned, leaning slightly warm purple. I really like this shade a lot. I also really like these two colors together. I really like the tones and colors that were chosen for this palette. Okay, final palette, the Planet Spirit palette in collaboration with Betty Jean. So starting with a shimmer, the shade Fauna is described as it's described as a multi-chrome with a pink base. Doesn't say what the shifts are. I'll do my best to describe them. So I'm going to start with the shade Dry. Wetting my brush. And then with my finger. So this definitely shines pink. It also has gold, green shifts. Like those are the main things. Again, similar to the multi-chrome in the Flora Story palette, sheer. Like kind of a translucent base. So it's not like an opaque shade, and it definitely shines pink predominantly, like just facing a light source. Then we have a matte, the shade Kingdom. Okay, for the second time, my camera ran out of memory, but this is the shade Kingdom. It went on really, really nice. I cannot bring myself to re-film these eye swatches, so this is the shade Fauna and Kingdom. Okay, next up we have the shade Animalia, which is described as an orange pearlescent shade with multicolor shimmers. It's like a coral with gold shimmers, it seems, so. A wet brush. And my finger. This is such a beautiful shade. It's like a coral with gold shimmer, and it almost has like a bluey green shift as well. It's gorgeous. And then next up, the shade Pride is described as a bright purple matte. Ooh. This is a gorgeous shade. This one on so opaque. Oh, that's lovely. That's so pretty. It's like a purpley fuchsia kind of color. So nice. Okay, next up we have the shade Majestic, which is described as a golden yellow pearl shine with multicolor shimmers. They love multicolor shimmers. It's like a gold yellow, I would say, with pink sparkle to it. With a wet brush. And my finger. So yeah, a really beautiful golden yellow with pink shimmer as far as I can tell. Maybe a slight shift of blue as well. And then the shade Rescue, which is described as a bright pink matte, which it definitely is. Again, really, really gorgeous. I like these two shades together as well. Okay, next up we have the shade Familiar, which is described as a bright green shimmer base with multicolor shimmers. It's like a metallic teal. With a wet brush, and my finger. This is quite a sparkly shade, and it's like a teal blue purple duochrome. Really gorgeous. The duochrome aspect of it is obviously like kind of difficult to see on camera, but it's quite apparent in person. And then the shade Habitat, which is described as a bright orange matte. That's a really nice bright orange matte. And then last two shades. First up, the shade Kindred, which is described as a deep purple pearl shine with multicolor shimmers. This is like a satiny kind of purple shade. With a wet brush, and my finger. So yeah, this is a like satin purple, like a royal purple. I mean, maybe it has a little bit more punch than a satin, but it's like not a really, really intensely metallic shade. And then we have the shade Sanctuary for last, which is described as a bright rose red matte. I would not describe this as a rose red. If I'm being honest, I would describe this more as like a warm toned pink. That is a gorgeous shade. Okay, so these are the last two shades for the eye swatch portion complete. Okay, so let's do this look. I'm going to try to use all three of the palettes today. Probably keep it basic in terms of shape, shocking to no one, but playing around with the colors maybe. So, starting with the Planet Spirit palette, I'm going to start with the shade Rescue, this beautiful hot pink, which works out well for me because I have slightly stained lids from pink eyeshadow that I used yesterday. Oops, whoa, okay, pigmented. I know that I like Oden's eyeshadows a lot. I don't know, there's always something about Oden's eyeshadows that never quite make it into like my absolute favorite category, and I think it's just because I find or at least in a lot of ways, my experience has been that they don't show up necessarily as deep on the eyes as they do in the pans, but that's not necessarily all the shadows in every palette. I think I noticed that mostly in the Christmas palettes they released, but otherwise I have really no issues with their performance, especially the mattes. I always really like the way they perform, but I do sometimes wish their palettes had more depth. Well, I guess they have been doing that pretty well, actually, recently. But that had been a critique of mine prior. So far, so good with this rescue shade, though. Honestly, I feel like going forward, I would use this as a, like, main crease shade. It's really pigmented, really, really nice. I like it a lot. Now I'm going to use the Flora Story palette and take the shade Orchid. And I'm going to put this in the outer part of my crease, so the outer half, my outer corner, and then bring it halfway through my crease. I like how buildable this is, like the level of buildability. It has pigment, but not like so pigmented right out the gate, and it builds really, really nicely, so I like that a lot so far. If it were up to me, I might have made this shade a little bit deeper. Shocking, I know. But I think it's like still decently deep. Like I think for a lot of people with lighter skin tones, this is like a deep purple. I think having it darker purple might make it a little bit more accessible. But that being said, I do think that you can build this purple up to make it like pretty deep. I also wish the green was darker, but that's just my constant feedback. Then I'm gonna go back into the Planet Spirit palette and take the shade Pride, which is this fuchsia shade. I don't know if I have a matte that's like this in my collection, to be honest. And I'm going to put this in the front part of my crease. And then I'm going to go into the Sea Talk palette and take the shade Night Swim. Then use this to deepen my crease. Because I think this is the deepest shade across all three of the palettes. I feel like this is obviously a navy, but it's not, like it still has brightness to it. You can see here after I built it up. It's not like the darkest blue I've ever used, which for some is good. For others, such as myself, is not necessarily like, I would have maybe preferred something just a touch deeper when it actually gets applied, which is herein lies the thing that I can't quite put my finger on about Oden's eye, and I think it's just that, like, their shades are never quite, like, they don't translate the same depth that I think they're going to when I actually, like, blend them onto my eyes. Which is, like, it's a personal criticism that I have. That's not going to be everyone's issue, you know? Not to say that they're not good shadows by any means. It's just kind of like my observation of the way they perform. Now my issue is what shimmers am I gonna put on my lid, because we're working with a purpley crease. I'm gonna take Kindred on the center of my eye from the Planet Spirit palette, and then maybe Iridescent Shell on the inner part. That feels right to me. Okay, first I'm gonna put some NYX glitter primer all over my lid. Okay, so taking Kindred. I think the thing about this shade is, like, it's a pretty purple, but it doesn't feel that special to me. Like, I feel like I have this color. It's not super sparkly. And, like, the color is nice, but it doesn't necessarily I don't know, fire out my loins like the shade Animalia does. Then, wiping off my brush and taking Iridescent Shell, which does translate, I feel like, very blue on the eyes. Or at least because the shine and shift is so blue and so strongly blue. It definitely gives like a very strong blue shine. Which does mean that it goes well with the palette theme. Okay, so I just did that on my other eye and I just blended a little bit. It's nothing really that exciting that I felt like I needed to add time to this video. What?
Were you talking to me?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No. And then I'm going to take Kindred and Electric. Kelp? No, Iridescent Shell. My bad. And intensify these on my lid. I really like the pairing of these though. Iridescent Shell is really, really pretty. And then just take the slightest bit of Rescue and reblend it, although I feel like you really can still see it quite well. And actually, I forgot to mention this in the beginning of the video, but I did buy a highlighter as well when I made this order. It's the Moonlight Feel highlighter in the shade. Weirdly, doesn't have it. Oh, Azura Shine. I wanted to get a different one initially. That was my first choice, but it was sold out. It's like the one, like the purpley blue, really sparkly one that everyone loves. It's stuck in here. The packaging is really, you aren't, the glare is so strong. But anyway, the packaging is really nice. And then this is the shade. It's a blue purple highlight. I guess they have two of those, but I think this is the one that's like a little bit less sparkly. Oh yeah, that's very blue. You can see it. Which, you know what, it actually goes better with the look that I have than I initially thought that it was going to. So that's good. And I figured, why not apply this on camera before I do my lower lash line. It's quite blue. Like there is, I think, an iridescent base to it, like a translucent base rather, but it obviously shines very blue, but it doesn't look super blue when I face front. And I will say there are like quite large specks of glitter in it. Rather than being like glittery, like a really glittery shimmery highlight, I feel like there are like specks of glitter that are kind of like attaching to my face that's in this highlight. Which for me isn't like the biggest issue, but it does look a little chunky. Okay, and then if you're wondering, I use the Physicians Formula Butter Blush in Rose Pink. It's kind of lilac-y. I felt like I wanted to use that. So I think because I'm using so many different shades, I just want to keep it like pretty similar on my lower lash line. I thought about doing a teal lower lash line, but I feel like that just would be too much. So I'm going to start, nope, not with this, with the shade Orchid. And then taking Pride and putting that in the front part. And then taking Night Swim and deepening my lower lash line with this. And then I'm going to take Rescue and blend this out. I might take a little bit of the shade Familiar, actually, just on my pinky, and place this as like a little pop on the inner part of my lower lash line. I think that's fun. And then for my inner corners, I'm going to take the shade Fauna. I'm using a lot from the Planet Spirit palette, actually. Oh, that's so pretty. And then putting some of this on my brow bone as well. And then I'm going to take a matte black. This is just a single from Pat McGrath. Any matte black will do. My camera cut off, but I just put that black in my inner corner. And now I'm going to finish off my face and show you the finished look. Alright, and this is the finished look. On my lips, I have the Makeup Forever Artist Color Pencil in Endless Cacao, ColourPop Lippy Pencil in Ashton, and the Unearthly Cosmetics lip gloss in the shade Glint, which they so kindly sent to me, and I really like it. I wasn't sure how it was going to go because it's purple with a blue sparkle, but I actually think it works quite well. I really like the way this look ended up coming out, I have to say. I was feeling wasn't sure how I was feeling about it at first, but I think it looks really cool. And obviously I can only speak to the few shades that I used across all three of these palettes for my first impressions, but so far they feel like what I'm used to from Oden's Eye. The mattes are nice. I talked a little bit about kind of like how I feel about Oden's Eye mattes in, you know, as I was doing my look. But yeah, I mean, they built well, they blended well. I typically don't have a ton of issues with Oden's Eye mattes. As always, I feel like they aren't quite as saturated and as deep when you actually get the shadows onto your eyes as they look in the pan, but it's not like they're not true to pan shadow. You know what I mean? So it's just like a me thing. I want my shadows to like really be able to like build and be deep. That's like a personal preference thing, but like there's no true real criticism of the way the mattes perform in a general way. The shimmers again are really nice. There's a really nice variety of textures, as is per usual with Oden's Eye shimmers. They also are feeling like, you know, Oden's Eye shimmers tend to get hard pan when you swatch them. These don't really feel like an exception to that. The multi-chrome iridescent shades are very smooth, like sparkly toppers. They're just nice, you know? So it all feels very consistent with what I'm familiar with from Oden's Eye. I think the color stories of all three of these palettes are really fun. Across the board, as always, particularly with the Planet Spirit and Flora Story palette, I do wish that there was a little bit more depth to them, because to me they are quite mid-tone, particularly the Planet Spirit palette, but that's always a criticism of mine, and that's obviously like a color story thing. It's gonna be like very personal. So I'm very excited. I will be doing 3 looks 1 palettes with all of these palettes. Don't you worry. Let me know what you think of this collection. Did you pick it up? Let a hoe know. And I would love to see you in my next video. Bye.